Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we are listening to Jose Flores. The kids don't leave you.
Ursula remained calm as the judge read the sentence, death by execution. Josue Flores was murdered last Tuesday on his way home from school.
The men confessed to shooting the teen execution style.
There was some satanic type activity taking place.
Officers tell us Trujillo stabbed her boyfriend with stiletto-heeled shoes.
2-year-old Riley Ann Sawyer's brutal killing shocked the nation. She was beaten to death, stuck in a plastic box found by a fisherman in Galveston Bay.
Former NFL player Antonio Armstrong Sr. and his wife, Dawn Armstrong, were murdered.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Antonio Armstrong Jr., guilty.
One by one, they described the deaths of the alleged other 8 victims of the convicted rail car killer.
Welcome back to the evidence room. This week's episode is about a life cut short, a life filled with promise that was taken for no reason at all. Josue Flores was 11 years old when he was stabbed to death while walking home from Marshall Middle School along Fulton Street. And even though cameras blanket this area, it would take 6 years before his killer would be convicted.
Every time we go to the boxes, we see the last group photo from that day. The timestamp, because the clock was right there. That was literally his last photo.
A pizza party for science club. And we know he's going to be dead within 20 minutes of that photograph.
It's haunting. Like those last 50 feet or so, you can see him. He's just marching toward the inevitability of Andre Jackson.
His little best friend at the time, we met at the school. And he testified for us.
That was also wild. We're looking at Josue, who is forever an 11-year-old little boy. And then you're talking to his best friend at the time, who was 11, who has now grown up.
And he's a senior in high school. And so you're seeing an 18-year-old, and he still has a picture of Josue, and he wants to be a vet. And he said, because he would talk to Josue about wanting to be a doctor, and he is going to college, and he wants to honor his friend. So it was interesting when I say he killed what he could have been, that's what we mean by that.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Man, I didn't expect the emotions to come back up. Man.
Tuesday, May 17, 2016, 16:43 and 01 seconds.
911 transfer for medical police.
What is your address? I'm on James Street.
Okay, what are you reporting?
Officer, oh my God, there's a cop right. A kid just got stabbed. Like he's like,
Is he in the street or where is he?
he's in the street. Yeah, they just got stabbed. Some man like black dude just ran up and stabbed this kid.
Why did you guys bring me in here?
Okay, did they tell you why you were arrested?
No.
Okay, well, I think there may be some things we need to clear up, okay?
Okay.
Right now you are under arrest.
You understand that?
For somebody within seconds to come across an 11-year-old child and brutally murder them, it's hard to even get your head around it. John Jordan, assistant district attorney, and I was one of the prosecutors on we call it the Josue Flores case. You know, I've been around for about 25 years, and so I've been a part of a lot of these cases and have witnessed many more. And we always call the case by the style of the defendant's name. And this is the only case that I can remember in the last 25 years that everybody refers to it as the Josue Flores case.
A question police are trying to answer and a neighborhood is trying to understand. How could anyone attack and murder a child?
I have an 11-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I also have an 8-year-old, and I can't imagine what this mom is going through.
Each candle, balloon, stuffed animal, and painting left here is an individual expression of grief, the image of a smiling Josue Flores on the minds of so many.
We talked about it sometimes at school because we were like, this could happen to any of us.
Flores was laid to rest Tuesday. Hundreds attended the funeral at the Holy Name Catholic Church. A mariachi band helped lift spirits, but ever present is the reminder a killer is on the loose.
And sometimes I have to walk home from school, and sometimes, like, to my mom, she gets scared. Now that, like, if I hook on from school, something bad will happen to me.
Amidst the grief, there is also resolve from a community that will never stop searching for justice. A thought seen on this poster. The Josue's killer. You will never find peace. You will never forget this innocent face. You will always be haunted by what you did.
He was just playing in the puddles, playing on the gates, doing nothing to anybody. And that is so sad.
He had told a teacher, I'm a big boy, I can walk home, because he hadn't been walking home alone. Usually his sister was there. His family was working income. His dad was a painter. Good people, but certainly lower economic ladder, working hard to put food on their table. But they believed in education. And his older sister was a nurse, and he dreamed of being a doctor. And he was in advanced science. In fact, he was in an after-school program for science. And so the reason why he was walking in that neighborhood, not at the time that class let out, but a little bit later, was because he was at the end of the year party for this advanced science, and he wanted to be a doctor. Being 11 years old and walking home from school, block and a half from your home, you should be safe. And I think it just touched a nerve in our community from the get-go.
I'm hoping it helps everybody heal.
After 7 days of grief, anger, and fear, this Northside community came together once more in a show of support for Josue Flores and his family.
It really so strongly shows how deeply people care about each other, and that's been beautiful.
Father Neil Thomas performed a blessing for Josue on the steps of the Holy Name Catholic Church before giving a homily during his funeral mass.
God is in control. God will take care of. God will protect each one of us.
Prayers of protection on the minds of everyone in this neighborhood, still on edge as Josue's killer remains on the loose.
There's still a lot of apprehension and fear. They don't know if somebody might be next.
We'll work to make this a better, stronger, safer, wonderful neighborhood.
A promise that comes too late for Josue. He never made it home last Tuesday, so the funeral procession took him there today, stopping for a final family photo before carrying him to his final resting place.
I'll never forget Josue Flores. I'll never forget his mom. I'm Chris Condon. I'm an assistant district attorney with Harris County. I was the other prosecutor assigned to the trial case for Josue Flores.
I remember when Chris and I went to the property room before trial as we're going through all the evidence, and we pulled out his backpack. And there was a card in there for his mother for Mother's Day. It was just so tragic.
Yolanda Arteaga was walking near North Main and Henry Street this afternoon when she looked down and spotted something shiny in the sewer drain. It looked like a knife, and Arteaga knew she had to let the police know right away. This corner is only a few blocks away from where 11-year-old Josue Flores was stabbed to death.
Yo como le dije al oficial.
She said, like I told the officials, I'm not sure it's the knife that killed the kid, but right now any evidence is good to find the killer. Houston police are not calling this a major development, and right now they are not linking this knife to any crime, but it has been collected as evidence.
It has been taken into our custody, and it will be taken to the property room, and it will be processed for any evidence that may or may not be on it. It could be a knife from anywhere. It could be a knife that somebody just threw down there. It could be down there for weeks.
The family is hoping otherwise. They would love for this knife to give police some clues as to who killed Josue.
I hope and pray that, first of all, that it is the weapon, and that if it is, I hope that all the evidence stayed intact, or at least some, like they could find something on it.
When Josue was murdered, the knife was never found. Although there was attempts in looking in gutters and neighborhoods and things of that nature.
And we know based on the ME's report from Josue's autopsy that it was a small blade, likely a pocket knife. I mean, we don't know, but it was a very small blade.
So it would have been very easy to hide, to discard. Anything shiny that was found in this neighborhood was taken in for testing. So it was, and officers were volunteering their times. I mean, officers, who weren't even working were coming in. I mean, everybody cared. Everybody cared about this. And so it wasn't for lack of trying. It's just we never found the murder weapon.
Hours after making his court appearance, charges against Jay Calhoun in the murder of 11-year-old Josue Flores were dropped. Investigators say Calhoun, who was arrested and accused in the stabbing death, was not responsible and had an alibi that checked out.
This looks like a Barney Fife investigation. Had they done one iota of real investigative work, they would have saw and learned just from the family alone that he could not have committed that murder.
His family says Calhoun was in Pearland at the time of the crime, and store surveillance video there proves he didn't commit the murder.
He was with me all that night and all that afternoon, so there was no way that this was possible for him to do this. And I just wanted to be cleared up that he's not the person that did this to this young man.
But as Calhoun's family is relieved by the latest developments, another family is grief-stricken all over.
He was all about love and compassion and just being there for people, and I know that's the message that he would want to come out.
The special memorial was held in Marshall Middle School in Josue's honor, where he attended as his search for his killer begins again.
Because I know HPD's working hard. I know they are working hard full-time, overtime. I know they're putting their hearts into it.
How did it come that this person was the first person arrested? It was before I guess the analysis of all of the footage in the neighborhood, and I think there was a lot of pressure. I mean, this was truly a situation where it is stranger danger, and we all know that rarely happens to the most innocent person in our community, an 11-year-old walking home from school. And so officers in the area were just trying to help, and there was an officer who had run into someone named Jay Calhoun previously, and it kind of fit the description with a knife and kind of an altercation. So he was arrested, and he gave an alibi, and immediately the officers followed up on that alibi, and thankfully he was on surveillance in a faraway area of town at the time that the crime occurred, so the case was quickly dismissed. But make no mistake of it, it was a tragedy. Anytime an innocent person is arrested, I don't want to make light of it, although I think everybody was in good faith.
I just want the right person to get caught, and I don't want anybody covering for anybody else. Let justice be served.
So how did Andre Jackson get on everyone's radar?
What ended up breaking the case initially, and we came back to it when we tried the case, is surveillance footage. Folks who, good citizens who reported seeing something in the area. Officers going on the ground and pulling ring doorbells and surveillance footage from businesses and Metro, and trying to develop a timeline because they knew when the 911 call had come in. So what was the common theme was there was an African American male seen fleeing the scene, various descriptions, in a green jacket. They released video footage of him in the area. A convenience store owner was familiar with that jacket because it was so unusual that it was like an unusual green color. He had seen the lettering on the back that didn't make sense. And so he knew when he saw on the local television, if anybody heard anything, they knew that they had seen that person earlier that day. Was he living in the area? He was living at the Salvation Army within a few blocks of that convenience store.
HPD had some of the surveillance video that they captured was kind of it's like an overhead view of a side street not too far away from the Salvation Army. And as Andre Jackson was fleeing the stabbing, he ran underneath the surveillance camera, and you could see very clearly, well, in one angle you could see his face, but you could see very clearly the jacket in the back, and you could see it was like J.B. Lyman was the lettering on the back of the jacket. They released that photograph to the public, and this man who ran the store recognized the jacket.
It was like a gift from God. I mean, like if he had just been dressed normally and didn't have a distinguishing jacket, I don't know if the crime would have ever been solved. And so from there, the officers went to that convenience store. They were able to pull from an ATM machine to see who had made a withdrawal around that time, and that's how he was developed as a suspect.
Where was he arrested?
At the Salvation Army. He was arrested at the Salvation Army, taken into custody.
Did he have the jacket on?
The jacket was in his room. It was not on him. It was on the back of a chair inside the room that he was in.
You know this case of the little boy that was stabbed in the area over there?
Yes.
Okay, you're arrested on a warrant regarding that.
Okay, what does that mean? What does that have to do with me?
Well, first thing, my question is this a photograph of you?
No.
It's not?
No.
Do you have a jacket like that?
Yes, but I don't know if those are the letters that are on my jacket. It's kind of Chinese.
The day the murder occurred was Tuesday, May 17th.
Is this me on the 17th?
Yes, that is you on the 17th.
Where?
Like I told you.
You said it's part of the crime scene. How?
Well, hold on. Let me get there for a second, okay? Just bear with me for a second, Andre, okay? On Tuesday, May 17th, the stabbing occurred at approximately 4:40 p.m. Okay.
And what time are these pictures from?
Those pictures are from right after the stabbing.
Okay.
Now, let me ask you.
From what camera?
Okay, where were you on that day, that afternoon?
I don't know.
You don't know where you were?
Bizarre is the exact word I would use. It was odd. It was just odd because he was trying to find out what the investigators knew.
This is you, right? Okay. Here's the problem. Okay, for you. The problem for you is you're seen fleeing from the crime scene from there towards the Salvation Army.
Seen fleeing. That's what these pictures are insinuating.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps there's another reason. Well, that's what I'm asking you. Perhaps there's another reason, and so we've already established that that's you in the photographs. Okay. Right.
Right.
Okay. Hold on. Were you on Fulton that day?
I don't know the streets over there. I'd have to look at a map.
Okay, well, I can get us a map.
That's what I'm saying.
I can get us a map in just a second.
Tears from suspect Andre Jackson Jr. as he stood before a judge for the first time. Tears also came from the family and friends of 11-year-old Josue Flores. Jackson is accused of stabbing Flores at least 20 times. A prosecutor said Jackson admitted to being at the murder scene.
Defendant was then arrested and admitted that he is the person on the surveillance cameras and admitted that he was at the scene and ran from the scene.
Prosecutors said a total of 5 surveillance cameras in the area captured Jackson wearing a distinctive jacket. Prosecutors said that one of those pieces of video was captured before Josue's death. but was only discovered last Thursday.
Devastating, man. It was devastating, not just for the whole city, but for the whole family, man. It was real hard, man. It was real hard because he started crying too, man. He realized what he did was wrong. And he realized that he's going to pay the price for it.
Disgust and anger from people inside the courtroom. Many of them walked the 1.5 miles from the crime scene to the courthouse. Some were not pleased that Jackson's bond is set at $100,000.
And I want him to be in jail. I don't want no death penalty. I don't want nothing like that. I want him to be in jail, sit there and think about everything he did.
That's the first time he was arrested. Why was he released and the charges dismissed the first time?
He was arrested in good faith based on the statements of the people at the scene, based on, again, the importance of the green jacket. But he was arrested while DNA was pending.
What specifically was being tested?
DNA has to be swabbed from, pieces of evidence. A lot of times that's going to be from a fluid, like a bodily fluid that can be identified, blood, semen, that kind of stuff. There was no blood on this jacket. Now, either, I don't know, maybe no blood got on the jacket during the stabbing. Maybe it had been wiped down. We don't know. We'll never know. So they were not processing specific areas. So in other words, there wasn't like an obvious blood stain that they're swabbing to see. So they were sort of just going to places that would have most likely contacted the victim. So they swabbed, sort of the outside part of the jacket, and luckily they swabbed the kind of I guess like the cuff of the jacket. The jacket was a material that wouldn't really hold DNA. It would have been kind of easy to wipe off. It was kind of like I always tell people, like Letterman jackets from high school. The sleeves are made out of that kind of like plastic leather. That was kind of what the material the jacket was made out of. But the cuffs were made out of kind of that gathered cotton, kind of stretchy material.
So more absorbent.
More absorbent. And so the DNA analyst with DPS swabbed that part of the jacket, both cuffs, pretty extensively, inside the cuff, outside the cuff.
We had been waiting for the better part of a year for the outcome of the DNA evidence in an effort to link him to the homicide. The results of the DNA and the blood analysis are at best inconclusive.
I was familiar with somewhat of the history that it had been filed. It had been filed assuming that the DNA would come back a certain way. And then when the DNA came back as inconclusive, the decision was made, a tough decision, to dismiss the case, because you only have one opportunity to try a case. And if you try it and you don't have all the evidence, you're going to second guess yourself if you don't have the right result.
2 years later, and the pain of Josue Flores' death is still very fresh.
But we want justice.
Josue's family, the community, along with police and elected officials, gathered to remember the 11-year-old. In 2016, Josue was on his way home from school when someone stabbed him more than 20 times along this fence.
I'm feeling sad.
Stella Morales Walters created Safe Walk Home North Side after Josue was killed to help protect other students.
We need to come together. We need to reignite the fuel and close this case. It's a tragedy on a tragedy.
Everyone thought police solved the case when they arrested a man named Andre Jackson, but last summer the Harris County District Attorney's Office dropped charges against Jackson because of inconclusive forensic evidence.
Justice has not been served at this point. All we can do is keep trying.
Many people, including Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo, believe Jackson was the killer.
Obviously, the police chief is convinced he was the right person, but he's acknowledged we have to have the right evidence as well when we bring a matter in court.
We want answers. We want to know what's going on with this case.
Sonia Parker says she is a friend of the Flores family, and she, like many, are frustrated police have not found the little boy's killer.
What finally happened that brought Jackson back onto everyone's radar?
There was a homicide investigator named Rich Rodriguez. Let's just call him the cop who wouldn't quit. He is sitting in a homicide conference. I think it was in Atlanta. And someone from DNA International a private company out of Florida was given a presentation on what they have developed in the private industry as opposed to the government on a little bit more sophisticated DNA testing. And he immediately thought of a case that he had been assigned because he was a cold case squad, and said maybe that could help us.
We have evidence now in Utah at a lab that is utilizing techniques to extract DNA from evidence that that our lab and our state lab does not have the capacity to do. And we're hopeful that we're going to extract that DNA and we're going to get this suspect, we're going to bring him here.
He coordinates taking the sample that had been previously analyzed and found inconclusive, and they took that specific sample. So it wasn't a re-swab, it wasn't a new swab, it was the DNA that had been removed, but our labs just didn't have equipment, or protocols sensitive enough to determine whose DNA that was, and they were able to look at it with their more advanced equipment and determine that it was Josue Flores' DNA.
Was it immediate? Go get him, go pick him up, and we'll take charges now?
There was a coordination between the Houston Police Department police chief, the elected district attorney, sharing information, and making sure that everybody was on the same page. Obviously, once a case is dismissed years before, and now we're going to resurrect something, folks at the highest level need to be consulted. And a warrant was issued for his arrest, and he was taken into custody.
This is the first video of Andre Jackson since his arrest, charged in the murder of 11-year-old Josue Flores back in 2016. Deputies escorted him from the courthouse back to the Harris County Jail.
I'm Grace Jones, son of Pop.
Today's hearing was reset and Jackson didn't stand before a judge. Jackson was initially arrested in 2016, but prosecutors dropped the charges after DNA tests came back inconclusive. Announced yesterday, the district attorney's office says new advanced DNA testing on a jacket seized from Jackson's home does show a match to Josue. A community member was at the courthouse showing support for the Flores family.
We're here to support the family. We're here to support the justice system. We're here to support whatever justice we can get.
Hi, my name is Andre, and I'm making this video in direct response to the media as well as the press conference that was held about the case of Josue Flores' murder. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible and as concisely as possible because, quite frankly, I'm just tired of hearing my name associated with this case.
So I know you pick him up, you arrest him, but then he does that YouTube video. How did that factor into the prosecution?
It was more humorous to us. Obviously there was a lot of public statements he made that showed some animosity towards the Hispanic community in town, and that was concerning. However, we weren't going to use that in trial, and so it was just more information to try and figure out who this person was.
They are just trying to save face and console the community, and they're going about it in the wrong way by trying to disseminate false hope that one day I will be proven as Josue Flores' killer. I am not his killer. My fifth point that I want to emphasize is that the very same community that they are mentioning so much needs to be where they look for a person of interest or a suspect. They need to reference the crimes that young Hispanic Americans are committing across Houston. This is nearly a form of harassment, and I'm considering legal action against this municipality and judicial system.
Andre Jackson is accused of killing 11-year-old Josue Flores after stabbing him 20 times with a pocket knife while he was walking home from school almost 6 years ago. As prosecutors present their case against him, much of today's testimony centering on key evidence in the case, including new pieces of surveillance video played in court, which show the young boy at different times, from leaving Marshall Middle School to walking down the street with his backpack on. Several other videos played for the jurors show the accused, Andre Jackson, putting on his jacket and looking at his hands, walking past an elementary school and running down a street.
The jacket Jackson had on, say prosecutors, is the same green jacket that they say belonged to Jackson the day the 11-year-old was killed, and that it contained his DNA. This morning, Jackson sat with his defense team as the state called the first witness, the owner of a Chevron gas station. The business owner testified that he provided surveillance video to police in 2016, which showed video of a man in a green jacket inside of his business.
The family is desperately seeking justice and closure.
A member of LULAC who is here to support the family says they have waited 6 long years for justice for Josue.
They are very saddened and hopeful at the same time.
The work that was done by HPD finding and going through all those videos cannot be overstated. It was important. I mean, it gave us, I think during our trial prep and throughout the trial, we kept coming back to the map. So we had a map of the neighborhood where the school was located, where Josue had traveled, where the murder occurred, and then where Andre Jackson fled, all the way back to the shelter that he was staying at the time.
We had that map on our wall, and no matter what we did, whoever witnessed, we always went back up to that map, and you could just follow the jacket.
Everybody else in the neighborhood was running toward Josue, and we had one person who was running away. And it was this guy in the green jacket. The part about that always got me, though, is as Andre Jackson comes around the corner, the first time we pick him up on video, he's got the jacket kind of draped over his shoulders. And before he puts it on, you can see him kind of go like this. And it looks like he's checking his hands, and then he throws that jacket on. And that was always something that was very telling to me. I mean, it's hot outside, so he's putting on a jacket, which is weird, but why would you check your hands first before you slip your jacket on?
When asked, Josue Flores' father and mother said they were happy as they walked out of the courtroom, telling us they would speak more about the jury's decision tomorrow after their son's killer was sentenced. Andre Jackson began sobbing even before the jury walked into the courtroom and continued crying as the verdict was read. Muttering the words, "Oh God," after a jury convicted him of killing the 11-year-old honor student nearly 6 years ago on May 17, 2016, after stabbing him roughly 20 times with a pocket knife. Prosecutors surrounded the 11-year-old's mother and father, who were also in tears after the verdict was read. 5 members of Jackson's family also sobbing as they listened to the verdict. In their closing arguments, prosecutors spent about 11 minutes of the allotted hour. Jackson faces 5 years to life in prison at his request and will be the judge, not the jury, who decides his punishment.
We were so exhausted from the late nights, and I remember saying that, guys, we're put in this position, and it's an honor, but I don't want to live in a community where someone can be killed walking home from school and we got the right person and he gets to go home free. This just can't happen.
Gracias a todos.
Juan and Maria Flores leaned on gratitude the day they say justice arrived, 6 years after their 11-year-old son walked toward home, but never made it. A judge Wednesday sentenced Andre Jackson, the man convicted of killing Josue Flores, to life in prison.
Your Honor, I'm asking you to right the wrongs in the system.
Jackson, in a written statement, begged the judge for 5 years. He cited an unfair case, one he wrote relied on revenge rather than justice. But after speaking for some 16 minutes, Jackson learned he'd spend the rest of his life behind bars.
Justice was done today for Josue Flores.
The right decision, pressed Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg, who praised her prosecutors for going the long haul. The case came down to DNA evidence on a green jacket Jackson is accused of wearing the afternoon he killed Josue. Trace DNA, as found by a lab in Florida, after tests in Texas couldn't link Jackson to the crime.
I think the challenge was a number of years ago dismissing the case, knowing the DNA was inconclusive, with the hope that one day we would be here today.
There was video evidence tying Jackson near the scene, but beyond that, his attorneys say there wasn't anything else. Yet guilty was jurors' conclusion.
It should be concerning for the citizens that this is all it takes. My client
was never identified by any witness as the person that was the murderer.
Josue Flores would have graduated high school this spring had he not been stabbed over 20 times. His best friend, Angel, said the two had a pact, a promise, he says, to always be there.
He gave me the motivation to keep going. He gave me the strength to get up and say, this day is for Josue. And now I feel like I made it up to him.
You always want to know why, as though that's somehow comforting, as though there was something that Andre Jackson could say that would make us understand why he would do this to that little boy. But the truth is, there is no explanation that could fill that hole. There's nothing that could make what he did acceptable or understandable even, or relatable. So I think one thing I've learned is don't try to understand. Don't try to understand what a monster does. Just accept that it has been done.
I've said it in closing, and I truly believe it. I mean, I such a horrific crime. The case was dismissed and dormant for years. And the way it ended up resurrecting itself and ultimately leading to his conviction is Josue himself. How so? His DNA. Josue, years later, was telling us, I'm here. I'm on his jacket because he killed me. And it just took patience. It took, and the family was always so kind, and they had every reason to be angry. The community was angry, and the family was just trusting. I don't feel like we got the conviction. I truly believe Josue got the conviction.